Thank you. So Chuck and I met, I guess, earlier this week, and I wanted to start with a really cool story. Normally, when I do these types of things, I meet somebody and we talk about the weather and we talk about how you're doing and all this crazy stuff. But I sit down with Chuck, and within the first 15 seconds, he's telling me a crazy story about his son, curiosity, and essentially we were involved in this amazing story within seconds of being together. I hadn't done as much preparation as I should have, and I'm like, you know what would be really cool? If we tied storytelling with brand relevance in my mind, right? And so as I'm thinking about that and talking to Chuck here, this is 2 days ago, I'm like, wow, this guy's a really good storyteller. In my last 20 years of being in business, I've met very few people that could tell a story so quickly and create something out of nothing in just a second. So I hope that you get as much as I did in the few minutes I talked to him earlier this week over the next 30 minutes. But that being said, let's start with you, right? Tell us about your journey. Like, what's your journey like? What's it been like? And as you do that, what makes a good storyteller? And more importantly, what makes a good storytelling brand?
Well, thanks for that. That's a good question. Truth be told, I'm a sneaker-obsessed kid from Queens, New York. Thank you for that. Go Mets. And you know, I work in the toy department. That's how I see it every day. It's hard earned. I've had a circuitous career. I'm the most unlikely person in any room that I'm in, and part of that is, you know, has been my ability to tell stories. You know, and that's the genuine connection that I have to the work that I do. I wasn't always that lucky. I've marketed a lot of different things, a lot of great things, but not something that actually I was totally invested in and obsessed with, you know, most of my life. So I'm super grateful to be in the spot that I'm in right now.
That's awesome. I'm going to dub this quotes from Chuck, so hashtag quotes from Chuck. But within the first 15 seconds, right? This is for 15 seconds. I wrote this down and asked for permission. A great dialogue is created when the right people use your product and the right team promotes it and speaks about your brand. When this comes together, it is all tied to a vision, and you have the power of choice. Talk to us about creating that power of choice when these things come together, right? Great people using your product and this story coming together.
Well, I think you heard some of it with Ocean Spray before, which was so fascinating to hear that journey. And we all know this in the room as marketers and strategists, like the choreography is everything. So the way it comes together is, we know from our meetings, our decks, our late night, you know, emails, all that stuff, you know, it's really, we've all worked really hard to construct the narrative, right? And then you hope that it lands. But I think that choreography is everything. And, you know, for us as a brand, you know, it's measured 9 times and cut once. You know, we really believe in that, but that's also the essence of our brand, which is quality and craftsmanship, right? You know, the shoes that we make, you know, especially, you know, things like, you know, our Big USA shoes, but frankly, everything we make, craftsmanship is what's supposed to be viewed in every part of that, and we take that approach to marketing and storytelling as well.
That's awesome. So if I were to summarize all of that, right? So storytelling is about the craftsmanship. It's about curiosity and authenticity, right? Let's go to the other side of this conversation, which is brand relevance. How do you define brand?
That's a great question. I think for many of us who either are brand side or client side, the definition really depends on, you know, the brand itself. So for us, it's about living at the intersection of sport and culture, right? You know, that's where we see, you know, brand, but internally inside our business, I talk about brand not just as marketing, but as product, marketing, and merchandising, right? Those are 3 major functions, how our business is constructed. So when I go into meetings or I have to go, you know, as part of our sell-in to our customers, our regional audiences, you know, I don't want to be the marketing guy in the room. If I'm the brand guy, that means that product, marketing, merch, that we have shared vision, we're completely aligned in how we're going to go to market, and however we got there, when we break the huddle, we're all going to run the same play. So for me, brand is more than just the marketing aspect. It's making sure that all the functions within the business are aligned to, you know, to have that shared vision and how we're going to go to market together.
That's awesome. And so, as you think about the New Balance brand, right? You guys are, I think, most recently, I've seen a lot of articles about like New Balance in the luxury world. New Balance just released a new initiative called Reconsider, if I'm not mistaken. So it seems like more and more New Balance is everywhere, right? It's part of our life. It's part of our story. What's been the strategy to kind of play in those areas for you and your team?
Know our purpose, be genuine to our audience, and again, making sure the entire company is focused on that audience. About 6 years ago, we sort of codified that, an age range, a global profile, and we talked to all of our teams. Truthfully, the people were the makers who were making products, and we're obviously invested in lots of different sports and facets, of style. But for us, it was really, making sure that everyone was focused on what made our audience similar as opposed to what made them different, right? Because if you're the person who has the tennis business and you're the person who has the Made USA business, you're like, well, my customer needs this, or my audience needs this. And actually with partners like Media Hub, who's in the building here today, we really work to say, well, what makes our audience similar? And then focus on that as sort of our outbound strategy to connect with them. And then the other side of it, when you bring up the luxury or the reconsidered, the luxury part of it, truthfully, is it's through some of our collaborative partners, our commitment to quality and craftsmanship. The Made USA shoes that I'm wearing right now, these were shoes that like you could find at our outlet, basically. But stylish women across the world decided these were cool, organically many years ago, or people like Steve Jobs, right? And then how that comes into the zeitgeist today. So it's just really, it's still a byproduct of us being authentic to ourselves. And then Reconsidered, which is something we just, launched, just this past week, which is a great initiative. That's really about our commitment to craftsmanship and to sustainability. Obviously with sustainability right now, that's probably, we could talk about that and what that means from a marketing standpoint for many of the brands, strategists and agencies in here. But for us, it's really saying, well, the life of our product is extensive. So either we will recondition it, we'll take B grades and fashion them so that they can be worn every day. But it's really more about us standing on our values and knowing that our audience values that too.
That's incredible, right? So to stand behind a shoe that's been worn and reconsidered, obviously, it's incredible to see that type of craftsmanship. What's your a little twist here, but what is your favorite story about the New Balance brand, and how did it come together?
I think my favorite story is that we're like a 118-year-old startup in a lot of ways, and the brand has changed in myriad ways, just even in the last 5 years, which I'm sure many people are aware. But the story that internally we can have that mindset that we're going to be a startup, that we're a brand with heritage and not a heritage brand. We're not going to let that define us. For me, those are when you talk about where you go to tell your stories, whether it's during your holiday season or it's the beginning of the NBA playoffs, the fact that we're grounded in that, to me, it just ensures that our stories are going to be genuine when we tell them. For us right now, the audience that we covet, and many of us in here do, they know it when they see it. So one of our key brand pillars is show, don't tell. Our current brand campaign that's running right now over the last 2 years, there's no dialogue. There's no major exposition. It's a window into these incredible people's lives. They're partners. They're not paid ambassadors. It's a co-authored story, but it's really just are they having fun? Are we the brand that's having the most fun? Come on in. It's trying to be really inclusive. So right now, for me, that's probably my favorite part of what we're doing. It feels genuine to our values, and it's resonating with the audience too.
So a key takeaway for the audience, right? So if you guys have a product, and the shoe is really your canvas for the storytelling. How do you center all the story around this shoe, this canvas?
Well, right now it's bigger than the shoe, right? For us, where we are at this part of our journey, where we want to go for the next 100 years, frankly, and that's a lot of what we talk about. It's not just the moment that we're in. I think this audience, again, they know it when they see it, but it's also probably the absence of details is probably what they notice the most. So anything that we do that rings false has a very serious knock-on effect for us. So it's just really important to be as genuine as possible and then, they make that decision, and hopefully we honor it over the lifetime that, they're part of our brand.
Yeah, I think one of the things that you just said that resonated is as a creator in the digital space, one of the things that we do is use white space to actually let people fill it with their imagination, both in talking, words, and everything else. I think you guys are doing something very similar, right? Which is let the white space kind of be filled with people's imagination and curiosity.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was struck by your T-shirt. It says "Look Up." Do you want to tell everybody about that quickly?
Yeah, I think really quick. So one of the things that you guys do is tell great stories. Our job is to build great products to ensure there's engagement around those stories. And you can't do that if people are always looking at their phone or they're always looking down. So our job is to build great tools to allow you to tell great stories and then kind of connect those two together in a meaningful way. And over the last few months, we've gone on this campaign of saying, like, listen, like, just look up. You can't engage with somebody. You can't engage in storytelling if you're constantly looking down at your phone. And I think as parents, and I think this is what we were talking about, it's just our kids are basically looking at their phone, and you're like, please stop looking at your phone. Like, come to dinner. Please stop doing that. Come to dinner. And so we've been part of this problem, like our company. And one of the things is, listen, let's stop. Let's build better tools. So the storytelling brings people in. The tool keeps them engaged in a meaningful way. And that's our hope.
Yeah, I love that. That's awesome.
Let's talk about. I think there's this thing called AI lately. With the rise of AI in this creative field, what's your take on that?
Functionally, operationally, there's a myriad of things that we need AI to do to run our business better. As a marketer, as a strategist, as a creative. Steven Soderbergh, famous film director, complete innovator in that space, he gave an interview last year where he said, that he's not afraid of AI, in his industry because AI has never, it's apropos that we're in here, AI's never been hungover. AI has no life experience. So when I read that and I thought about that, and then obviously everything that we're reading right now is invest in brand, invest in brand, invest in brand. So, if you triangulate that with sort of your values and the genuine nature of the story that you're telling, AI is great, and it's going to help us reach more people, do business better, but it's never going to replace, the story. Like in that Soderbergh article, it's, AI's never had its heart broken, right? So, when you think, again, just something we saw with ocean spray, right? That couldn't be conjured through AI, but AI can support us in so many other powerful ways, obviously.
Yeah, I think one of the things that you just hit on is the hungover effect, the heartbroken effect, the true joy effect, right? I'd love to see AI being hungover by people.
It's coming, I'm sure.
Hey, can you get me an aspirin, please? I'm a little hungover. So I think one of the things that I'm excited about is this resurgence of great storytelling and the creation of great user experiences, right? AI is going to help us with so many different tools. But as you just mentioned, what AI is really doing is it's amassing everybody else's story into one. So it's not really authentic. It's basically gathering all the bits and pieces. What are the jobs that are going to stand out in this new era of AI for you? Obviously, you mentioned storytelling, but how does that come to life over the next 18 months, 12 or 24 months?
I think it's really going to be the role of, how we look at influencers. Obviously, for some people in here, for businesses outside of here, it's a critical part of, how you go to market, how you connect with your audience. We have a clear partnership approach. We've had the fortitude and the luxury of saying no to a lot of things. And I think that as we go forward collectively, as a group and people who are in this business of brand, we've got to really think hard about, how that space is evolving. And, for some people, it works in such a beautiful way, but we're also seeing so many cautionary tales of the momentary nature of it, right? Where it's falling flat, CEOs are losing their jobs, things like that. So I think it's, really look inward. I worked in collaborative consulting for a number of years prior to being a marketer. And again, self-taught marketer. And one of the axioms that we used to work with Fortune 50 companies to just, drive decisions, 6 months worth of work in 3 days, right? It's just incredible. Capgemini, you can look it up. It's a great methodology they had. One of the axioms that we always used was the answers in the room. We have to really, as much as we need to trust our audiences right now, we have to trust ourselves. We have to trust our partners. If we don't do that and we give it away, then it's not partnership. It's not co-authored. And I promise that, a 25-year-old walking down the street right now, they know. So we have to give our audience a lot more credit than maybe we have in the past and maybe the industry has in the past. So for us, our audience is everything. We covet every single interaction with them, but we also work our ass off to make sure it's genuine.
So trust, right? So you mentioned trusting your audience. So you first have a profile of your audience, their needs, essentially tie them together across the different brands within New Balance. How do you get your team to essentially get to that point of trusting their audience enough to create great stories?
For us, it's a lot about getting out from behind your desk. We work in a tangible business. Obviously, we're trying to tell big emotional stories and connect with people across the funnel, but we still work in a tangible business. Putting a pair of shoes on can do a lot of things for you. It can just give you a sigh of relief. It can power your run. It can just give you some comfort when you need it. It can make you look cool if you feel like you need that, right? But I think for us as marketers, we have to be out and talking to people. So for me, I'm going to get on a train after this. I'm going to go to Philadelphia. I'm going to hit a couple retailers just quickly, and I'm going to talk to the RSAs. I'm going to be, what are people buying? What are you wearing, right? Staying connected to our audience. And again, for us, it's a physical, visceral thing, but we can forget that very quickly. So for me, it's spending time with the audience and observing and being in the spaces that they inhabit. If I'm going to say that we live at the intersection of sport and culture, I just can't be posted up in the burbs, on Microsoft Teams all day. Some days I am, unfortunately. I think some of us are, and that's why I left my phone over there, because it's just, getting a little active here. Yeah, I think, you have to be with the audience, and again, we all have great partners. There's great partners in here who do focus groups with us. Go to a focus group. Go sit there. You know what I mean? Don't wait for the information to be synthesized and brought back to you. I know the rate of how we're all going after this in different ways is tough, but spend some time. Again, my partners at Media Hub, it's an incredible dialogue that we have with them. It's not put in a quarter, get the report, right? Because that would just be a waste of everyone's time. And then for me, I wouldn't really know, or I couldn't compel my teammates to see what I'm seeing, so that we do have that shared vision when we go on market.
What's a quarter? I don't think I've seen a quarter.
I know, right? Exactly.
Okay, so we've talked about storytelling, we've talked about curiosity. How do you bring that into the digital space in a meaningful way, right? So you have the storytelling, you don't have the words, you basically let people kind of fill in the blanks. How do you bring them to actually tell those stories and share it through that digital space?
I mean, brand's a collection of experiences, right? That's one way we could define it. In the digital space, it really, for us, it's a complete emphasis on quality. It's not just what's in our feed, but increasingly like our paid social, for example. And then obviously for a retailer, the quality of that shopping experience online has to be paramount. We've, over the last, almost decade, we put an emphasis on direct to consumer. And that's the ultimate interaction for many of us marketers right now. So it's just making sure that we're absolutely focused on quality across every interaction. For us, that's what matters.
Yeah, I love your site. There's a lot of movement. You know what you're doing. It's very directional, and it's fun to go onto that site. Like you, I grew up basically collecting shoes, and whenever I had a chance to interview somebody in your position, I'm like, ooh, I get lost in that site for a couple hours, which is fun. Last question. So, what are you looking forward to over the next 18 months in terms of storytelling and how to bring that to brand relevance? And then we'll open it up for questions here. But
I think some of us are part of global brands, some of us are part of regional brands. I think we've got some scary things coming our way in the news cycle, I think, at least in this country. I'm looking forward to, the sort of the continuum of sport that's going to happen in the United States right now. When you think about a World Cup, a Women's World Cup, an Olympics in LA, the entire world, that's obsessed with sport or is aware of sport is going to be looking to the United States. And I think obviously is New Balance Athletics. I'm exceptionally excited about that, but I'm exceptionally excited about that for brands and finding that intersection. I think everybody has a place to play. The stories of sport, are obviously inspiring and unifying, but also we know as marketers that that's probably the only live thing that anybody is watching right now. So what opportunities do we all have, at that intersection of sport and culture? I think probably more than are obvious to us, and not just, sponsorship. I've sat through, some different brand innovators, events here in Boston where we've talked about, the sponsors of the Celtics and the Bruins and really how they dimensionalize that, not just by putting the logo, on a jersey, right, which is exceptionally powerful. So I think we should all be sort of looking at, the unity of sport and what that means and what that intersection could be for many of us in the work that we're doing.
As you talked, I think one of the things, and I'll open it up to questions, but shoes have connected generations, and like so many different products have been able to, but it's just really cool to basically have a pair of shoes that connects you across multiple generations. And it's such a cool talking point. And as you're talking about that, I'm like, wow, that's really interesting. I have this very similar parallel to sports. Anyway, Brandon, questions? Oh wait, are you ready for questions?
Yeah, let's go.
Yeah. I'm Dan. I run a company called Tangled Roots. Storytelling. Stories are, at least traditionally, meant to endure or continue. But with especially large corporate revolving doors, stories can end up being ephemeral, or moving in one direction and then coming back, and moving in one direction and coming back. This is a challenge we all have right now. How do you ensure inside of a large organization that stories can continue and be built on in the way that they're intended to be, with sort of that constant of change now?
Yeah, I mean, I think if your leadership is aligned to the brand as a collection of experiences, and that, while memories are short, if you've taken the time to choreograph, all the people to get something to market, that you're thinking of it as not just a momentary impression, but that's something you're building on, and, to your point, not everybody's invested in that. New leadership comes in, opinions change, but, I think right now, again, it's funny at the beginning of this year, it's like, 2024, the year of brand. It's like, okay, well, I think it's always your brand, right? And it's we're grateful for those articles, right? When we see those come through, because you can either say, I told you so, or hey, you should read this. It's what I've been talking about for 6 years, or some shit like that. But it's really important, to think about that you're building. And listen, some of us are going to be tasked with having to build a new foundation, right? But it's what are you building on, because that continuum is really important, because at some point you're going to want to come back around to it and be proud of it. We all make mistakes that, some of the stories don't land the way they want to, but they have to feel connected. Otherwise, I really believe with, the modern audience that they will see it and they'll notice.
Would you agree with the statement? As a brand, you are trying to become more human, and as a result of that, some of your stories land and others don't, but it's all part of the experience that you're building on.
Yeah, I mean, some things just don't connect, right? It's I think sometimes they don't connect because they were false, they were pressured, they were maybe too influencer centric. But if they came from a genuine place, then you can stand on it and keep moving.
Any other questions?
I'm Emily. I work on Twisted Tea Social, and I have my 550s on. I loved what you said about how you think about connecting with what your audience has in common and really building on what they have in common. I'm just wondering if at all how that shows up differently for your existing audience through organic versus when you're trying to attract new customers in paid.
That's a great question. I mean, we're trying to find the symmetry. Truthfully, 550 is a great example, right? We've seen the highs of it, and then you see it sort of just kind of become part of the everyday. Whereas 2 years ago, there was no kid probably in North America who told their parents, I want a pair of 550s to go to school, right? But for us, it's making sure that if this is something we're invested in for the long term, it's making sure that are paid and organic have some really good symmetry. So it shows that we're standing for it, but also two, making sure that, with New Balance, obviously with a lot of collaborative partners that we have, making sure that they come back into the story at some point. With the high top version of that, the 650, one of our best partners and probably one of the best marketing storytellers in the world, a guy named Joe Freshgoods. He did a story on the 650 that was, you guys can look it up. I legally shouldn't even be talking about it, but he did a beautiful story on it, and it helped just give it a bounce. It helped keep it in the conversation, right? So I think, but your paid and organic thing is really important to keep those close.
Mike?
You want to give it to Mike?
Yeah, I don't. It doesn't.
No, you
Mike, stepping up.
repeat it into the.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna do.
Yeah.
Actually, so how do you balance the increase of play that the people that you market to have as it relates to your brand, and how do you basically like play that balance? Is that
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think for us, we, when we go to our partners, internally and externally, we want to go and tell them what we stand for. And here's the stories that we want to tell. Here's the products that we want to get behind. But the audience owns the brand as much as you do in so many ways. I'm sure you know that. Especially with Sam Adams, right? The generational connectivity that the brand has, and then you're obviously, with your recent campaign, I saw the cutout of our guy over here. You're trying to stay connected. So I think, listen, if we believe in that they own it as much as you do, then it'll change your strategy dramatically. Not that you're gonna, because if you're forcing something down there, or you're trying to market something that is not going to connect because there's some internal narrative that says this is what we have to go to market with, it's not going to work. So again, it goes back to knowing and trusting your audience. And listen, there's things that we're going to do in the next 18 months that will be, a definitive style choice, right? It will not be a 550, like you said. We believe in it. We've got a great story to tell. We think it is inextricably linked to our DNA. Hopefully it connects. If it doesn't mean, back to your earlier point, like it doesn't mean that we're not proud of it and we have to dramatically pivot, because we're thinking of that foundation that we built and making sure that the stories stay connected going through.
That's awesome. Chuck, we do have to wrap up, but I think you're going to be going around for 5-6 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you all.